Okay, you're good to
Oh.
go. Yeah.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I am Tim Von Rieden with ConceptCookie.com, and I'm here with my good friend Joe Chico, who will be helping out with questions and answers. Say hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
And if you have any questions pertaining to what I'm working on, or if you have a question about workshop or something you're working on, anything even pertaining to digital art in general, feel free to ask, and we will try our best to get all the questions to me while I'm drawing, and then I will do my best to answer them for you guys. And today we're going to be doing a Paintover. So this has been a requested live stream for multiple, I don't even want to say weeks, I want to say months. And finally I decided I was going to take some of the ones that people have been sending me this past like 2 weeks, and I took two of them that I felt like I would be able to talk about and what I would believe the next step would be to take to improving the actual piece. So I already did all the marketing stuff for the first time in a long time, so let's just go ahead and get right to it. Let me share out my screen. Okay, so these are the two, and they were sent to me, and there was pretty much just like general critique or what you think I could do next. So I'm going to show you what I think I would, or what I would suggest. So I'm going to start with this land shark, which is on the right here. So I'm going to make this the main focus. Then I'll square, or I'll gray out the other part. And then I'm going to move this on the side here and make it bigger. Okay. Or is that better? See? There we go. Alright, so right away, what I do like about this is you can see the forms of what looks to me initially is like a red fox and a shark. So I think the impression that they were trying to give off is a land shark, and I really like that they have a lot of the shapes and the forms of each creature, and they blended it pretty well. And pretty much I'm just going to be taking what they already gave me and then improving upon like the shape structure. So right away, and you can see here, it's a very pointed edge. And with pointed forms, it often gives the impression of violent or it's the villain. And that's why triangles are always or typically used for things that aren't like the hero. And with this, since we're trying to do more of an aggressive creature, I'm going to just sharpen that up a little bit. And I'm going to pull it down. And pretty much what I'm looking for is I'm looking at these different shapes and where they end. And some of them are so curved that I'm just going to clean them up. Oh, and then also I'm only going to be using the chalk brush for this entire live stream. Go ahead and I really like the color palette that they chose because I think for the fox it really blends well with the shark's forms, and all we have to do is kind of blend the color over top the shark form, and it'll give it this kind of a land-based sense to it. But then where it gets into the fur here, what I'm going to do is, since it had kind of longer near the top, let's say I have it more of like a gradual buildup, where the hair maybe starts more in like a short trimmed area, and then it builds up longer, and then it builds into this kind of like a mohawk type deal in this white area. Because I don't want it to be too long. I kind of like the feral look of the shorter hair. And then even with like the back of the neck, what would be really good is if I had a reference open of both the fox and the shark and have those open up at all time. And we always talk during these live streams about how it's definitely not cheating. You're just using the reference and you're being inspired from it and you're looking for accuracy as well. So in this case, I'm kind of blending the thickness that a shark generally has because it doesn't really have a neck. It just kind of forms from the head into the body. But then we're going to pull from the fox's then attributes and then pull from that. So he probably has like this chin area here. So let's give it some folding. So the one thing that I think people often forget is drawing like little folds, because just like how people do have folds in their skin, sometimes you don't think of it as much, but like if you grasp your hands or something and you look on the inside of your hands, like, there's a bunch of wrinkles. So any areas where there's tension and it has like this stretched area, you really want to magnify that because then otherwise you're focusing on more of just a blank, smooth palette. But those little details like stretching those types of areas really helps add another level of detail. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to really focus in on the face because I feel like this is such a strong shape and I would love to develop it more. So the one thing that this artist did that I really liked is they were very neutral with their colors. Like they didn't try to overshade anything. They were very minimalistic, and it's easy to work with that more so than if it was like very blended and hard to kind of capture the lighting. Because right now it's very much limited in its lighting. There really isn't much lighting at all. It's a very neutral lit creature. So then I can take this, and then I would probably tell her, like, try to decide on where she would want the light source. Even if there really isn't like a definite light source, like if this is just purely for concept work, because sometimes you don't always have to have like beautifully rendered pieces, especially in concept art, you usually don't. But if we were going to take this to the next level, I probably would want some indication of a light form or light source so that I can create more, especially in like areas like this eye here. Because I find this really interesting, but leaving it solid black might make it look a little empty. So let's grab this white, and I'll zoom in even more so you guys can see this. Or not even white. So I'm using this color right here. It's almost like a tan, like a soft tan. I'm just going to build kind of like a key overhead light. And this is the direction it's hitting on the eye right there. And then to give the appearance that this eye is kind of glossy, I'll have a bounce light that's hitting the bottom of this light. Or of the eye, I mean. And now foxes usually have pretty cool eyes. I could maybe attempt to give it an iris. I might shy away from doing this just because it might look a little strange, but it's one of those things where you can always just try it out. If you really don't like it, just take off the layer or erase it. Or in my case, I usually can just Command Z it, like that. Let me zoom out, see if I like that from far away. I don't mind it. I might clean it up a little more, but then I think I'm going to keep it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, earlier you mentioned something about villainous. So are you making this character more villainous because of the sharp angle of the nose, or are you just kind of doing a character creature concept that is just like neutral?
Or do I go down like the mischievous, deceiving? It's
Yeah,
actually friendly, but it has like these sharp features.
yeah.
I don't know yet. I got to decide like while I'm doing this if I think this is like a ferocious type beast, because then I can really play up the angles. But then I also have to stay somewhat true to an anatomy. I can't just like go crazy with triangles everywhere and not think like, does this make sense? Does this fit like the scenario or environment he lives in?
Yeah, I was just thinking about like the eyes, because like usually if it's like if it's friendly, I was like, well, it makes sense if it's like a darker eye, because then it's like evil, when it's smaller. But if it was like a friendly thing, it would be like massive and huge, you know?
I'm thinking like shark, because you know how they have those like beady black eyes.
Yeah.
So I still want, I think, somewhat of a predator type feel to this. So like right here, what I just did, let me undo that. So without that, it looks like it's sad or it's giving off this frightened appearance. But if you just lower the brow on it a bit, that really increases how ferocious it looks. Because then it changes it from like sad looking to angry looking.
Hmm. We have one question, and it's Who is your guest, Tim, by Benedict.
My guest is Joe Chico. He's one of the friends I usually draw with almost on a daily basis. And um, I think, yeah, you did do a stream before with us too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One
and
of
he's kind of an aspiring artist as well. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now a lot of times I also see this where like the edge, and you don't have to do this everywhere, but in areas that you're really bringing attention and your focus to. So like this right here is really sloppy to me. Like when I see it, it reads just is very um like unkempt, unpolished. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my circle hard edge brush, and this is probably the only time I'll use this instead of the chalk brush, just because I really want that clean edge. So I'm just grabbing, and you can do this one of two ways. You can either just grab the background color if you're only painting like on one layer, and then just literally push it right against that edge, or you just take your eraser tool and erase all the excess that you don't want.
I have a question
Yes.
from the audience, and it says, "Hi. On the one hand,
Hello.
you hear, yes, on the one hand, you hear that you shouldn't just draw from reference, do copies, but do stuff from imagination. On the other hand, you hear a lot that it's crucial to use reference. How would you balance the two? And I do not know how to read the language that their name is in."
That is Japanese, and I would say it's crucial. Like in everything that I'm drawing, I always spend like 5 to 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes, like 5 minutes, literally. That's all it takes. Just pulling up references, making almost like a reference palette, and literally you're using it as not only reference but inspiration. Like let me think of what I've been working on recently. So I guess I've been working on a League of Legends fan art piece just because they have a contest right now, and me and one of my buddies is we're entering and we're just kind of like seeing if we can place in the top 10. But the thing that we almost have to do is you have to pull up references of these characters because since it's fan art, you want to make sure it's true to the form and the original design. So you almost have to. But if you're thinking more of like an original design, so let's say if you're doing like a character, just having an anatomy up would really help and improve the overall quality of your character. And it's not that you have to like just pull it into Photoshop and draw over. That I don't feel is beneficial. What I do feel is beneficial is developing your visual eye by having that reference to the side and being like, okay, now how can I make my character have the same proportions or anatomy as this reference? And that's what you should be looking for. I mean, you can still do stuff from your imagination. I think that's really good. But like, let's say you get inspired and like you want to do something that's Mad Max themed, where it's very much apocalyptic. Apocalyptic. I can't even say that. And immediately, you shouldn't just go straight to the sketchbook. I mean, you could, but you might even be more inspired, or something might come about that you didn't even think of if you just do like 5 minutes of prep and reference looking up. It's kind of like the way I think of it is like if you were doing a test and like the test would be your creation, you would just need to study, and just having that 5 minutes of like quick study really helps.
I was going to say, isn't a lot of the class that you're going to be hosting in the future going to be a lot about that, especially the first couple sessions about being able to look at an object, draw it, and then like study it, not just copy it, because I feel like a lot of people they hear that you need a reference and then they think you're drawing a still life, as opposed to you know what an apple looks like, but can you draw an apple, and can
Oh
you
yeah,
make it look like an apple, you know?
yeah, no, that's definitely going to be covered in the workshop. Or just in general, who did that test where it was like, I think it was the ant test. Is that what this is?
Yeah, that was Feng Zhu. I
Feng
remember
Zhu,
that.
that was it. Where
Yeah.
he had his entire class draw an ant without any reference. And the ones that could kind of draw the ant were the ones that do use reference on everything they do for the most part. And he would talk about how you can't just rely on yourself because you don't know everything. Even though we want to, as artists, believe like we're doing everything by ourselves, it's our imagination, whatever. You really do need reference if you want things to kind of create a more dynamic look to it and just more anatomically correct look if you're doing, especially if you're doing characters.
Oh yeah, like I just sketched out a gorilla in like a minute, or the head of a gorilla, and I was like, this looks like a gorilla. But then I'm like, I can't go anywhere from where I'm at because I don't know what the rest of the gorilla looks like. I just know that he's got a big brow and an eye, you know. So it's like it's I need a reference in order to complete what I'm working on, you know, in
Hmm.
order to make it look good. Um,
Exactly.
we have another question from Anna Daly saying, "How do you find art friends?"
How do you find art friends? What's really funny is I feel like the last year I've been meeting them through these live streams or through just really weird things where, like Joe, I mean, Joe, you can actually explain how you met our crew, I guess.
Um, I I remember uh, finding the Doodle Art Battle, which, from what I understand, will be back in the
Hmm.
next month. So everyone should look forward to that. Um, but I remember watching that and being like, "Hey, I'm from the area. Can we meet up and draw sometime?" And it was really kind of weird. And they were like, "Yeah." And then we ended up having conversations about movies, and then um, a lot of art talk happened, and then we were just like all like art, passion, let's draw every day, and they were super nice to me because they let me into their like art circle friend stuff, and just been hanging out doing art ever since. I would say the for other people though, um,
It
it's
is
it's
hard.
rough. Oh yeah, it's really rough because of like we've said before, you know, it's art is extremely lonely. You know, you sit there
It's
behind the
very
desk.
low.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I don't know because you met up everyone through school, right?
Not exactly. Well, what's kind of funny is I do think uh, building or going to an art school, while I don't think it's financially worth it, I do think it's worth it just for the people you meet and the connections and networking. So a lot of the people I still talk to today, I did meet in school. But then there's a lot of them like Joe, or we have a friend Franny, or even Kieran, who lives in Australia and just literally watched the streams, asked if he could join us one day, and he did. And now I feel really close to Kieran, and I think that that's just how it happens. And as artists, I always feel like we're secluded and we isolate ourselves because that's when we do art. We do art when we're by ourselves for the most part. And it's good to get out there and draw or find people that have a similar interest because oftentimes, a lot of the times, I would say, we're surrounded by people that don't have the same interests as us, especially if like your family knows nothing about art or like the school that you went to, like not a lot of people are into art or anime or video games or whatever it might be that you're into. So you almost have to sometimes rely on like internet buddies, like what we call them, or even like Jonathan Hamilton, who I talk to right now. And it's like we met because of what we do and what we love to do, and we have similar interests. So I will say art can be really lonely, and it is sometimes hard to find friends, but reach out, and I think you'll be surprised by the response you get and how accepting someone might be to talk to you and like start maybe even drawing with you and having your own little Skype doodle party hangouts. So that would be my advice: is just reach out, and you'll probably surprise yourself by how open other artists are because they're just as lonely as you most likely.
I actually just met a dude over Counter Strike.
See?
Yeah, over like we just talked about art for like 2 hours the other night. It
I
was
feel
a
like
lot of
I'm
fun.
always talking to people about League at conventions. That's how I meet up with those people.
Long story short, um, be friendly to people. Don't shut yourself in. You know.
Hmm. All right, really quick. So this color from the white, I want to bring down. I really want to emphasize this shape right here and then bring it down. But I kind of like that there's this indent, so I'm going to work with that. But I'm also going to be highlighting some of the folds without going like extreme highlights. Because I think another thing that young artists often tend to mistake or do things, they either over highlight or they overshadow things. Don't try to hide things in shadow or light. If you really want to emphasize that there's a crease there, try working with like hue contrast even or saturation contrast. Don't immediately assume you have to go for value contrast. And that would be like one thing I can definitely tell like someone that's I would consider more of a beginner than someone that's kind of in like the intermediate level. They kind of understand how to do that accurately.
Next question is from Meh0.
Meh.
Yeah, MEH.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I'm doing a portrait for a friend, and I didn't do one for quite a while. By the way, I used to do all portraits traditionally. I finished the rough sketch, and I'm trying to figure out what to do next. Kind of struggling with it. Any tips?
Okay. I would definitely say if you finish a rough sketch, hmm. Like if I was in the point where if I finish a rough sketch of a portrait of someone, what I would probably do is really look at the lighting angle. So like let's say this was some guy sketch in the corner here. Okay, so let's say this is the step that you're at right now. What I would probably do is then grab my shadows and lights and lay those in next. I mean, really look at if you have a reference picture, definitely really analyze like where are my shadows, or if his hair is darker, lay out a pretty thick blocked shadow, or what looks like a shadow if they have dark hair, but it's really just the actual color of their hair. And then in other areas that might seem like there might be a deep shadow, so like under the nose, under the lips, and then maybe just give a subtle hint of where the light sources will be. But really try to block it in though. I guess the point of what I'm trying to do now is I'm blocking in the shadow and light, because then from here, then it's all just finer detailing and like cleaning it up. But if you can have all your light values blocked in as well, then you're gonna save yourself a lot of time if you're trying to do it all like individually. Now inside this little eye area, I really wanted to emphasize all these like subtle wrinkles. And to do that, you just use either like a slightly darker color and butt it kind of right up against these lighter wrinkles. And I would probably do that everywhere. I think creature design, if you really look at like creature designers that are in the industry or very professional ones, they often emphasize little wrinkle details like that. Or especially with fur, they usually do a really good job at emphasizing how to create fur. Now, I will honestly admit, I don't think I'm the greatest at fur. That's why I often create really smooth skin creatures, just because, or even scales. I feel like I'm much better with scales than I am fur. But I can definitely say with like smooth skin, you definitely want this contrast of like where it's more detailed versus more smooth, and that will really punch up your realism effect. Now for this mouth, I wouldn't angle it the way they did, just because it almost seems like if you were thinking about this front view, you wouldn't see the mouth angled like this on the side. This is an anime thing where you know how you can always see like the inside of the mouth, or like the hair on one side is really crazy, but then it's like way over here on this side, where it doesn't really make sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably lift this a little bit, give it kind of a chin. Because I'm still keeping in mind I want to keep this or the fox shark look to it. So the other thing I got to keep in mind is making this seem functional. So I'm going to bring this back and make it really look like there's a jaw going on here, even if it's a subtle one. Maybe just have it like a gaping open jaw. I'm going to do the same for the bottom. Now for the bottom here, I'm going to bring in some of the orange right around the lip area. This is one of those things where I don't know if I'm going to like this or not, but you never know unless if you try. And I hear artists all the time talk to me about this kind of a situation, and my answer is always just try. You never know if you might like it better, or if you do like it worse, whatever, this only took me like 30 seconds and I can delete it right away. But not trying and having that fear grips you, and that's what will slow you down. I kind of like it. I think I might leave it.
We have tons of questions being.
Oh, sorry. Okay, just go for it. I'll do the best I can.
All right. Question from Nix, and it says, "Hi, I've recently been given an opportunity to showcase some of my art, but I haven't drawn personal art in a long time, just studies I can't really post. Have you ever had to produce a ton of personal work in a short time, and how did you go about doing it?
I honestly can't say I've ever had to do that, where if I ever had to showcase my stuff, I've been able to pull from the gallery that I kind of have online. But if you really want to showcase stuff in a short amount of time, I would say that's really tricky. And that gets into the whole, do you do the quality over quantity or quantity over quality? And with that amount of time, you almost have to either decide, do I want to showcase my skill and really have maybe like two or three really, really well done pieces that can showcase my talent, or do I showcase my speed and just have like 10 pieces that maybe aren't as polished or might as dynamic, but it showcases that you can work fast. And that's, I think, what you need to focus on, I guess.
Focus on focusing?
Focus on focusing.
Next question is from Parker. Do you usually start with guidelines to help with perspective?
I get this a lot. I don't almost ever do environments. And while I was in school, we had to do the whole 3-point lighting, or the what is that? 3 points. Shoot, I can't think of what it's called. It's like the two vanishing points, or the three vanish, or the one vanishing point, and then building perspective that way. So I was traditionally trained in that way, where I kind of know how to do it, but would I honestly say I've ever used it digitally? No. And even when I do in my environments, I almost try to eye it out a little bit. And that's just because of time, and I am not good with environments, so I don't try. If like that is my task that I'm given, and I have like a day to complete it, I can't waste my time doing the fundamental stuff. I almost have to eyeball it. And that's something I don't recommend doing it. And if you really want to get good with environments, really study those initial fundamentals and then have them kind of like ingrained in your mind so you can pull from them without having to use them. Where I feel like I'm so much more confident as a character artist that I almost never draw like anatomy or bone structure, just because I can go with the flow and it does work for me. But if I'm doing environments, it's really tricky. That's why you'll see environment artists work really fast, and you're like, oh my gosh, like they're amazing. But then there's one that I talked to specifically, and he always says, I don't know how you do characters, you work so fast. And I always look at his work, and I'm like, I don't know how you do environments that fast. So it's kind of funny seeing like the different range that a digital artist can extend to, you know. I'll make this look really nice before we move on to the other one. Oh, yes, I keep rapid firing.
Pew, 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 pew.
Yeah, right.
Um, from Benedict, was there ever a picture where you thought you failed completely? And if there is one, can you show it and explain why you thought that way at the time?
Ooh. um, you know what? I think I will. Okay, hold on.
No, you're supposed to go. No, I never fail at art.
I think it's good for you guys to see that where I've come from, and just to know like I can look back at my stuff, and this is how I want you guys to feel too. Like in a year from now, you can look at something you did a year ago and be like, I can do so much better than that. So let me see. I would say a piece that I really feel like I failed on. Okay, I think I know which one I want to do.
I actually did a repaint of something that I did like in 2007, and I looked at it and I was like, "This is awful." And then I look at my new one, I'm like, "This is amazing."
Okay, I'm gonna show you guys. I think this one will be good for you guys to see because I did 4 interpretations of this character. I did like one almost every year. So whenever anyone ever asks me about like, do I feel like I grow over the years, this is what I will usually show them. All right, so here is the first one that I have. So this I did my first year in school, and at the time I was super proud, and I was like, yeah, I'm starting to get it, and it looks like a character. And you know, I think sometimes you get really excited about digital art in general that sometimes you overlook flaws. Or even while I was doing it, I think I would even let myself get away with stuff. Like there was areas where I'm like, oh, that line looks really shaky, but then I would move on to another area and not go back and fix it. That doesn't really help anything. That almost just delays the problem. So then here's what I did the next year. So then obviously you can see I got a little excited with color where I started learning, okay, what do overlays do? What does multiply do? What do different colors affect the skin tone and everything? And then I was trying to even get more solid with my line art. And then a year later is when I think I really developed like shading, blending, getting rid of line art completely. And then this is what I created. And this is the point. Oops, I don't know if they're all going to fit on here. Let me move these over. So like every year I could go back and redraw this character and feel confident that I could do a better job at it. So then at this point, I thought I was pretty solid. Like I remember even in school thinking like this is the best I'll ever be able to do, and this is what I'll just recreate over and over with different characters, different subject matter. And then I got to a point where I was like, no, I'm not just going to settle. I want to keep pushing myself. There's no point in just calling it, quits and then that's it. So then I finally got to the point where this was done, I believe last year, where I really got into textures and adding details and not lighting things so strongly. And this is my most recent one that I did last year of this character. And this one, not nearly as fun of a background as you can see, but I really wanted the attention to be focused on like the lighting and the texture on the material, or even like her hair, or the clothing, the leather. And I've been really focused on details. So I think a lot of artists need to understand that I didn't just start, at point, whatever this is, point D. Like I started way back then at point A, and then over time I would just make jumps. Or at least I hope I've made jumps. I visually think, and I can be self-aware enough where I do think I've made jumps. And I think too many artists want to jump from A to D, and they just want like a quick path. How do I get from A to D? But you almost have to go through the entire route of like figuring out yourself as an artist and realizing what you're good at and what your tastes are and what you want, your personal creations to be. So okay, that was kind of a long answer. I'm sorry about that one, but I really wanted to show you guys like where I started and where I am now, and to tell you guys like this is the best that I thought I could do at one point in my life. The next year, this is the best I thought I could do. And then like every year, you should be able to look back and be like, I can do better than that. And as long as you can say that, then you are a successful artist, because then you're able to challenge yourself over and over again. Sorry about that. I really felt like I needed to explain that one.
Doesn't it like feel good when you look back like 4 years ago and then you look at what you're doing now and you're like, man, I can make it better, but this looks a lot better than it did 4 years ago.
It's a little bizarre. Especially when you're in the mindset of like, this is amazing, like this is the best I can do, like I'm really proud of myself, and then a year later be like, this is awful. Like I never want to get to the point where I look back and be like, I kind of like what I did before. I never want that to happen to me. I think that's a worry that a lot of us artists have, is that we get too comfortable at our stage of art, and I hope I never get too comfortable at where I'm at.
Yeah. I feel like it's a big confidence boost though to go back and look at what you've been doing,
A little bit. But then I never try to, because then that makes me feel like, oh, where I'm at now is good. I always try to look at like really professional artists that I admire and be like, that's really good. That's where I want to be at.
That's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next question is Mihoko de. When studying, it just jumped. When studying from life to study lighting, how is this useful? As every light situation in every art piece is different.
When studying from life?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess then you have to start analyzing like the strength of the light. How is it? Is there a color tint to the light? Is it sunlight? And how does this affect an object in distance? Like there's a greater distance between us and the sun and like a spotlight on someone. And like there's a difference in the intensity of the lighting as well. So I think you have to take into account just from observation, like how does this lighting affect this object? And understand that like if you're creating your own lighting situation in your own pieces, you have the understanding because you observed from life how different lights work and affect and treat your pieces. Oop, and we're just reaching that half-hour point, so I got to switch over. But I'll show you guys. So I kind of wanted to do more on this one, but so for this one, you can see the difference before and after of how I'm just really sharpening some of those shapes, and I pulled more from the shark, I think, influence here. I think the jaw needs to be adjusted a little bit just because it doesn't feel like it makes sense. It almost feels like it was warped to the here, or even maybe move down the wrinkles down a bit. So sometimes you need to walk away from your piece and come back to it and be like, okay, does this make sense? Because sometimes you get so wrapped up and like you're so involved with your piece that you don't even see the flaws because you're so entangled in it. So with this, I just really wanted to emphasize of sharpening shapes and having that language come across. So like if I did that everywhere, and I really like even like this paw, I don't know if this was intentional, but I really like how there's one kind of paw finger out and like the rest of them could be back as if he's like walking forward. I think this could be a really cool creature. I love the color palette. I do think I would have to adjust the chin and make the mouth more detailed. I guess one thing before I leave off on the shark, so underneath on this tongue area, I would probably want to intensify that this is like a darker area. It's like the inside of the mouth isn't like this light pink unless if you're like wide mouth and like there's a light shining into it. Because oftentimes the light source will be overhead, so the area here will be more under or more like in shadow. So I think it works here if I push this in shadow, and I could even give a hint to this white type skin on the other side to really show that this is like an enclosed mouth area. And from here I would probably build up the teeth, but starting off I would probably like that. Or even then I could look at like, okay, here's another cool thing too. So then like, okay, where this shape angles down right here, I'm gonna have that continue and then even affect the top of the jaw. So let's go ahead and like sharpen that. I think that even gives it more of a ferocious look as well. So it's kind of thinking of different things you can add to your character to even emphasize whether or not they are like a carnivore or herbivore. Just sometimes shape language really speaks volumes. So once again, that was the before and after. And I want to thank, I wrote her name somewhere, there it is, Simona, for letting me draw over her piece and showcasing this in a live stream. Alright, so now the next one that we have is this bear. And the reason I chose this bear is because I really think it's a really great design. I think they understand shape and proportion really well. The one thing that I would say if they wanted to continue on this piece would be sharpening the details, like the finishing polish. Because they have such a great foundation that when I was first sent it, I was like, you don't need my help, like you got this. And then I was like, well, okay, if they wanted me to showcase or like do some kind of a paint over, like I'll do what I think I would do if this was my piece and I was working on it. So that's how I'm going to kind of treat this one. But I want to first say, like, I think this is really great. So right away, I'm just going to fill in the rest of the canvas, this green color, so that I'm not distracted by anything else. I can focus. And I think just like what we did with the shark, just because of time limitation, I'm going to focus more on the head region. And while I do this, I'm going to be kind of going in and out because I want to keep answering questions. So, Joe, for a little while, I think I'm going to just keep drawing and then you keep asking.
Okay. I picked this question out specifically.
Oh,
What are
great.
your thoughts on talent? That thing an artist is supposed to be born with versus how hard work and practice. Do you think anyone could learn to paint with the right dedication, or is it possible with for someone that just doesn't have a knack for it?
I'm going to answer this in two ways. The first way is I remember a teacher told me while I was I believe it was in college, they said art used to be a trade, like a craft, especially in like the 1600s or like the golden era of like the Renaissance time. So like they didn't like pull people they thought were like specifically skilled at drawing. They would just start training them when they were young, and that would be their craft, kind of like a baker or a what's the person that works with tools? Why can't I think of the name? Blacksmith. Sorry. And they would turn out to be great. And I think it really showcases that anyone with the proper time, attention, and the passion for it, because I'm assuming eventually they got, a passion dedicated to it because that's their craft. That's what they're known for. So I do believe anyone can be good at drawing. Now, my second answer to this is it's also like learning a language. If you started when you're young, it just comes very natural to you. And that's where a lot of people say, oh, he was born with it. Well, not really, because even all artists that you kind of talk to, they'll say they started when they were like super young. Like I can always remember drawing. I don't think there was ever a point in my life where I wasn't drawing. So I do think it's like I was building up that skill level over time, and it started when I was like 4 or whenever I started, drawing. So I do think anyone can draw, but I think it does give people an edge if they start young because then they get through a lot of those awkward phases when they're little. Even like when I was 13, I think I was still like studying people and like how do I draw eyes, and I was really attentive to that. And then as you get older and you mature and your mind matures, then you become better with age, just through practice and study. So that's how I would describe when people would be like, "Oh, well, Tim, you were born with your talent." Well, I was like, "Not really."
I worked hard for this.
Yeah, because it kind of undermines when you say that to an artist too. It's like, well, it kind of is like, "Oh, you don't work hard. You were just born with it." It's like, well, no. It's like that's like saying a really good basketball player didn't work to be a good basketball player, you
Yeah.
know?
My hands have bled
Right?
on this canvas. All right. Do you happen to know any websites to get your art exposed and get critiqued besides DeviantArt by Freeze and Light?
The best place I would probably recommend, well, one, I usually use my group of friends. So if there really is something I'm struggling with or I don't like compositionally know if this looks all right, I'll usually go to like my Skype buddies or the friends that I went to school with. But as I understand, like not everyone has that resource bank that they can just tap into. And I remember when I was in school, I was struggling with the same thing where I was like, where do I go to? And I think I was relying on sites that didn't really give me any feedback. It would be like DeviantArt, which I'm not trying to knock on DeviantArt because I actually like to defend DeviantArt, but I will say for like honest critiques, I don't think you really get that much there. So the best thing you can do is if you have a teacher, if you're going to school, ask your teacher. That would be my number one. My number two would be your peers. And then three, I would say could reach out to people on like DeviantArt and stuff, or like put something on that, or like Draw Crowd or ArtStation or any of those other sites that like promote art. But a lot of the times you'll just get like oh, that looks really nice, or if it's fan art, they'll be like, oh, I love that character. Like it doesn't really actually help in any way. So then my greatest, the number one, I guess I put those out of order, but my number one thing would be email a really famous artist in your mind, so like an artist you look up to, and I think sometimes you'll be surprised with what they might send back. Where while I was in school, I sent an email to his name was Andrew Johnson, and he worked at a local gaming company. And I was just like, could you just take a look at my stuff? Please tell me what my next steps could be to take to get better. And not only did he send a reply, he sent 2 paintovers on my things, and it was like the best thing ever. Where I was like, man, I didn't even expect you to reply to me and for you to do this. And he was like, yeah, it's no problem. Like I'm always wanting to help people, and sometimes I'm bored at my job and I need something to do during my lunch break. And it's like, well, that's awesome. So I think you'll be surprised by something like that too if you send it in. And that's it. That's my answer.
Um, oh, Simona P has replied, and it says, I'm Simona, and I drew the bear Tim, not the shark.
What? Oh, I'm
But,
sorry. I wrote your name down on the wrong one. I am sorry.
but I was going to ask if you were going to put it on DeviantArt, because I would love to have it for reference.
Have what on DeviantArt? The finish?
Uh, I'm guessing the Paintover.
I can't just because it's not my work, and I would feel really shady if I did that. I can send it to you though on like our Facebook chat, but I'll definitely give you the PSD, like if you want to check out the layers or whatever. All right, so here's a good example. So like for the nose, I'm gonna really sharpen some of these angles here. Like the top of the nose, let's give more of a lighter feel because we have like this kind of indirect pillow shading light source. It's more like fantastical. And I think with like cute stuff, this lighting scenario works really, really well, where you're almost highlighting the cuteness of whatever you're working on. So even like this nose area, I might have somewhat of a gradient going up from below. And maybe I'll define if she has nostrils. Let me check. Yeah, so she definitely had some nostrils, and this was more triangular. So I think the one thing I'm kind of doing everywhere is butting more contrasts up next to each other, just purely through my hues. So I think you did a great job with like your shape language. I think it's so strong. And I think when you're shading, just remember like you can butt up two hues right next to each other. You don't have to pillow shade. So like for the nose, you can see like right here, oops, right here, I think it gets a little lost, like where does the nose end, and like this needs to be cleaned up. But I think if you just zoomed in and took the time to do it, I think you have the eye for it, because I can tell you already have the eye for stuff like creature design or even shapes. So now it's just taking it one step further.
Next question is from Benedict. Can you post Crystal on the page, and can I draw fan art of her, please?
Oh, wait, say that again?
They want to know if you can post Crystal on the page. I take it Crystal's the piece that you did over the years.
Yeah, that's my character.
Yeah, and they want to draw fan art of her.
They want to draw fan art?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that would make my day. I think whenever someone sends me fan art of something I did, it really is just feeling as an artist. So yes, absolutely, you can do fan art of it, and I could post it on the page. I almost wanted to do a full tutorial just to show you guys. Not even a tutorial; it's more of just like a lecture type deal where I just showcase over the years what I've done and like show you guys like I did struggle and I did have moments where that's really the best I thought I could do at that time. And then the next year, and it's one of those things where you also have to understand that time is also a big thing with art, and like you have to be patient, which I think a lot of artists struggle with.
Guilty.
Joe, guilty as. So yeah, I
Um,
love that, Benedict. Thank you.
Next question is from Anna. It says, do you have any tips for shading with minimal styles? I do a lot of American traditional modern tattoo style influenced work, but I have a hard time trying to get dimensional shading while still remaining true to the minimalism of the style.
I often give a lot of respect to those that work minimally because I am so anal about everything being like shaded and have a light source and all that. I think just because my mind is so meticulous on, I was kind of trained when I went to school to be like a 3D concept artist. So I always imagined I'd have to work as if it was a 3D perspective and I would be handing this to a modeler. So I was like, does this make sense from every angle, where if I handed this off to a modeler, they wouldn't have to like come up to me and ask like, okay, what would this look like though from this angle? Like I always tried to make it pretty obvious like what it would look like from every angle. Um, but if you're doing more of a minimal style, there is even a tutorial that just came out on our site with Sam Carr where he talks about minimal value shading. So even like with this bear, like if I want to do more minimal, I could almost have it more of like a flat brown and then keep my highlights more isolated in different areas. So I think the best thing you can do is really look at isolated highlights, because I think that's what will give you that minimal look, but then you're still having some sense of like a lighting scenario. Not that you even need it though. Like to be honest, with the minimal style, like look at Adventure Time or like cartoon shows that have more of like a flat base coloring. And I think that might be more of an inspiration than something like this, where this is more of like you really want to shade it, and this is more like an animation concept art piece. Okay, really quick. I'm gonna make this inside of the mouth a tad darker, just to really showcase that this is the inside of the mouth, and then it separates the tongue from the mouth a bit more. And normally I would probably split the tongue into two or two sections, not split it in half, where you can kind of see that middle indentation. But since this kind of has like a animation feel, I'm gonna keep the solid tongue, and I like the subtle transition from the pink to like this darker color. Not, I don't know if you're able to see it as well on the stream. Maybe I'll emphasize it more here. But I like the idea that if the light source is coming from the open mouth, so it's entering here just through like bounce lighting and indirect lighting, that it would just still be a tad darker. There'd be like that slight gradient from light to dark on the tongue. Now the teeth are a whole nother scenario where I would really make the teeth bold. Where I think you had the right idea with the bottom ones, but now for the top ones, let's do that, and then let's maybe make them a little darker as if there's like a shadow being casted on them from the whatever this part of the nose is called. I forgot what the extension is called. And then we can do kind of the bottom ones where they're just kept in light. Oops, I don't like that though. Like that. All right, sorry, Joe. Keep asking questions. I don't want to. Or no, we're all done.
There's
Oh no, we're not.
there's there's a question, but it's kind of a question, but it's also a their question is based off of taking a look at one of their pieces of art, but I actually just looked at their art and I kind of want to know the answer to that too. It says, I recently did a piece with 6 color limit and I got to the point where I just have no idea how to finish it. Any tips? Here's the painting itself, and they posted the link in there. It's from their Tumblr.
Can you send it to me on my Skype?
Yeah.
Okay, 1 second. I just want to at least finish this iris here. Now for the iris, I'm going to do more of like a colored outline on the edge rather than black. Now, this is just more of a personal preference, but just show you guys, like, I think everyone always assumes we have to have like a dark colored iris rim or no rim at all. I mean, you can have fun with playing with different colored rims as well. But the one thing I always try to do is I always try to give the impression that the light source is coming from overhead, and then on the iris, since it's concave, or no, concave, the light source would be hitting it on the bottom. It would be kind of collecting and pooling up on the bottom, and that's why the highlight would be on the top, because it's like passing through that clear section of the pupil that's convex because it's sticking out, and the iris is sticking in. So then that's why it would be pooling on the bottom here, but the highlight would still be on the top of the concave part. And I love eyes, so I like to focus on them a little bit. And even giving like a subtle highlight like on the inner edge of the eye, you don't even have to go crazy, even if it's just like a little one like that. Really gives the impression that like this is a wet surface or a shiny, or you're giving the impression that this is a different material than the fur or the actual different areas on the bear. Okay, so now let me go to this Tumblr really quick. Let me see what we got. Ooh. Okay, hold on. So really quick. Okay, so if this is where you're at right now, and then your question is where would you take it from here, I would actually say you're pretty, like you're good. Like you're on the right path. I don't even think you need any more direction from me because you are limited to your colors. But what is nice, since you can blend it, like you are adding more colors than you might think. So like, oops, hold on. So like from these spikes alone, like you have a gradient of colors. Now I'm assuming you're not able to pull from them because you can't just like add this color on the side just because it's a mix of these two. But if you can only pick from these colors, and that's kind of the challenge, what I would probably do next is I'd probably have more fun with like pulling in the yellows on the spikes, pulling it in kind of everywhere, because these are really fun colors to work with, where it's like this very soft, warm, like cotton candy color. And I would probably work up on that. But I would say you're doing an excellent job, and you wouldn't even need much direction because I think you're on the right direction. So I guess, yeah, I don't think, I would say keep going, and I would say maybe pull more yellows into different areas of the pink, like especially on the spikes, because it's so repetitious, but it kind of works. but even maybe having fun with pulling maybe some of the darker ones down here and um, pulling some of these out.
Yeah.
That, like I said, I think you're doing a great job, so keep going.
Simona really fast wants to know, um, you can just, or she said earlier, also I was going to ask, you said you can just put two hues next to each other, but if there's a transitioning shadow there, well,
Is one hard to read or something?
yeah.
Okay, hold on. Also, I was going to ask, you said you can just put two hues next to each other, but what if there's a transitioning shadow there? I hope you understand what I mean. All right, so let's do that on the nose here. So like right here, there's like a light source coming from underneath, and then there's like a gradient from this light to the shadow. And I really hope this is what you mean. So like the nostril, rather than giving it an actual outline to edge it out, I almost have to trust the fact that it'll be implied, the shape. And I know that it's kind of hard because I think as artists we always have to be like, no, well, I can put a line there and it will, better tell the audience or the viewer exactly what that shape is. But like with this nostril, I'm going to butt that up right against this, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But I also have to be careful that it doesn't look out of place either. So I might be a little darker on the inside. Because I think one of the hardest things I had to learn is trusting butting values up against each other, even when it looks like a very subtle change. And we always want to make it more of like a very direct, like this is this part of the area, or this is this part of the area. And I think letting it be more subtle sometimes will help improve your pieces. Because when you great artists, or at least artists I think are like amazing, like the ones I really look up to, they're all about subtlety. And I think the more that we focus on that rather than being more of like bold and dynamic, I think subtlety is what will really stand you out as a fantastic artist. Something like that. Now this is more of like a fun, I would say, style. If I was going for more realism, I'd probably keep it more in shadow. So it'd be even a more subtle difference, but I'll keep it a little lighter just for the sake of the bear. And now something kind of fun is, so if we have this cast shadow from the snaz being cast on the teeth, maybe we could also have some of it falling on the tongue. And this is what I mean by like having those two hues butt up against each other. So when we look far away, it gives the impression that light is just barely able to make it on the inside of the bear's mouth. And stuff like that is really um, important if you're trying to give more detail to your pieces. All right, sorry, Joe, you can keep going.
Alright. Since you're working on a furry animal here, can you show some methods of creating a decent looking fur for more realistic animal? Preferably a quick one that looks good from a distance, and a more detailed one that can be used for detailing.
Oh man, so admittedly, I do not like doing fur. I try to avoid it if I can, but whenever I do, the best way I like to do it is I like to keep it really loose and with like a big brush first. And then I actually see a lot of artists do this with a soft brush first. So they always talk about how you don't detail right away, you save that for last. So then let's say I grabbed a lighter hue. Oops. So apparently this is going to be a lighter furred creature. So then they'll grab like a lighter one, still using the soft edge brush, and create like shapes. So they'll create the shape of the fur. And then they'll grab a slightly even lighter one, make the brush size smaller. So a lot of the times it's a lot of building up your fur. And I know there's even some artists that will just go straight to a brush, like a special fur brush. And I have one of those as well, but sometimes if you're going specifically for like a certain type of fur, or you just want to do it where it has like a shaping to it, like if I was doing like the shape of this fur on the side of the bear, I'd probably do something more specific like this. And then we'd get even finer, or smaller with our brush, I should say. And it's like you're not like detailing every strand, but enough of them to give the impression of fur. The reason that I'm doing this on such a large scale is because then I'm gonna scale it down and show you guys what that would look like. And now, for the most part, you want to keep it in the general same direction, but then every now and then, I like to throw in just like a slightly different direction for a strand, just to give the impression of it not being so repetitious looking. And then, oops, I do this all in one layer, I did. Then I make it smaller. And I put it wherever I want. Now, obviously, this doesn't even match the color of the bear that I had like a different intention of fur that I was going to do. But like doing something like that, and then even if you would want to go in with like your eraser, then giving an edge to that fur, like where you want that fur line to cut off. So that'd be one way of doing it. Now I've seen a lot of other ways of doing it, especially on like there's a bunch of DeviantArt tutorials on it. Just like, and I think the other thing that I always see artists do is they use brushes. So like I have two brushes that I like to use. So let's see if I can pull these up really quick. So on this one, if you want just like a quick fur, and then kind of blend it in. But I usually work with that one on a small scale. And I really love, where is it? I have a curly hair brush. So it's really just like crazy and creates like a chaotic looking fur. So if you're looking something that's like more of like where the wild things are, this is kind of the brush I would probably use. So yeah, that would be how I draw fur. Okay, so now that we're already at the hour mark, I'm going to try to kind of move a little faster. So if you guys have any questions, now would be the time to ask, and then we'll kind of get through as many as we can before we have cut off the stream. All right, go Joe, go.
Okay. Let's see. Hey, love the streams and all the tips. Me and my friend are working on a project. I'm making the concept art for a mech, and he's modeling. It's the first time dealing with hard surfaces, and it seems to have some problems with lighting. Any tips on that?
Yes, you want to work very flat. So like with this bear, I'm working very organically, and everything has like a rounded shape to it. But if you're thinking more of like a mech, ugh, and you guys don't want to see me draw a mech. I did not watch Gundam back in the day. I did not watch any of these cool.
They have a picture of what they were already having worked out.
Oh, seriously, as I'm like sculpting out something.
Yeah, let me.
But pretty much you want to be working with like hard edge surfaces and like keeping it pretty flat coloring. So imagine where like the lighting source is coming from. So if like this was like, I don't know, some kind of like a shoulder guard or whatever, I would probably have the light sources coming from overhead or something like this direction. I might have a soft shading from like this light color. Even that's a little too intense. Like this, just to give a subtle hint of where the lighting's coming from, but for the most part you can see how this is generally pretty flat. And then I would have a really sharp edge, but then your highlights. Now this is where you're really going to sell your mech. So if I had it like on here, then I think where I usually see a lot of success with like mech stuff is when they have like a scratch and they do it really, really nice. So the best way that I would do it is lay down, I'd probably actually lay down my dark one first. So lay down my darker color. Then I really shouldn't be doing this with the chalk brush. Let me redo that. Because at this, when it's so small. Okay, so with the chalk brush, or with the circle hard edge brush, I would draw my scratch in first with a dark color. Then grab my light color and just give it ever subtle edge to it. And stuff like this will really add to the impression of a hard surface. But don't go overboard like lighting it or trying to give it value. Keep things more flat, and that's probably the best advice I can give for something that's more non-organic. As I jump back into like this happy bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? This is like the happiest thing to work on.
Question. Hi, I've recently taken interest in drawing birds, but I'm having trouble understanding how to make feathers look right without taking a year. Any tips?
Um, I feel bad because I think I'm getting a lot of creature questions today, but like I don't think I've honestly ever even drawn a bird before. I've drawn feathers, but usually I spend a lot of time like detailing and making them almost individual. So if you want to do them more fast, I would probably grab a brush. Oh, you know what? I take that back. What am I saying? I did a whole Piero course where, yeah, I had to teach myself how to draw feathers, but even that, I was still drawing them more individually, where I think you're looking for more of like a fast look at how to draw feathers. So I would probably grab more of like a flat edge brush, draw the general shape of the feather, and then just move on to the next one, but I would keep it relatively flat. So I might not even have any transfer turned on. And then maybe at the end, then you can kind of go back in and do some shading. But generally, I would probably get the shapes out first of like the general feathers. So if this was like my feather of the bottom of a bird, this is my bird, his little feet. So I would probably draw the general shaping of the feathers and then go back in and do like the shading and like showcase where one feather one begins.
From D Brown, down one state from you, here in Missouri.
Oh, D Brown is from the workshop. Hello.
We lack art schools, so in turn, there are few digital artists. Do you know any good semi-local groups or even a good online group to network with other artists?
I feel like there really's got to be one created in like in the next year or two, because I get this question a lot, but I really don't have like a hub that I went to for my art friends. Like it really was my school that I went to where I met a lot of the people that had the same interests that I do. Or even like Concept Cookie, I guess. I really would love it if Concept Cookie had its own like community and we had a forum, which we're kind of we've been in talks of maybe wanting to do one, so that might actually still be a possibility. But I really want like this, like the people that come to this live stream. I want us to, meet up and feel like we can talk to each other, because that's kind of how Joe met all of us. He just, was like, hey, what's your Skype? And we kind of went from there.
The Yeah, I was gonna say I think the biggest thing is um, trying to Will Terrell. He's a huge YouTuber and very very down to earth guy. Um, but he does always like people always ask him like that question, and he's like, start your own, like get a bunch of people together and do it. Like, he's like, but at the same time, it's really tough. Like he understands that it's really tough, and I get it too because I'm like, man, what if we just put a bunch of artists in one area? Because it would be like Spectrum, like where you just have all these artists just working on their own thing. It'd be really cool, but it's rough, because it's like you'd have to like think about renting out a studio and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like, why don't we just do what the Doodle Party does, and go to like a specific location, and just all draw together.
I guess that's one thing you could try is if you do have any of your friends that you can kind of meet, or even if you meet them online, which I mean you gotta be a little careful. Make sure you see their face beforehand, but just be like, yeah, we're gonna meet up at this place and we're just gonna sit and draw and then maybe go watch a movie later. And that's what we do, like once a month. Kind of is like the time frame that we do it with my group of art friends is like we just go meet up at this hotel and we draw for a couple hours, go to like GameWorks or we go see a movie. So I would
Yeah,
say the initial startup is really hard, but then once you have it, don't take it for granted. Like really remember, how hard it was to get that going and don't let it go.
yeah, because when you, especially when you like for me, like being inspiring artist and like going every time I go to one of those things or like when we go to a convention together, I come back off of this like art high, and you're just like you feel great. It's like a bunch of like art endorphins have just been shot into your body and you're like I must create things, and
Yeah.
like even meeting Paul, who works at Riot Games and he was just like I want to work in concept art,
Because
It's
then it's even cool, like then when your friends like have successes, you feel like they're a part of your team, and like you help them out just as much as they help you out when you have your. Like sometimes when I feel like I have a success, like I do attribute some of that to the friends that I have made over the years because they have helped you along the way. All right, so let's see here. I'm gonna try to wrap this up. So let's do maybe like 5 more questions, but really quick. So what I'm doing here is I really like that you started kind of like this dark outline thing that you got going on here. What I'm gonna do is just kind of clean it up and really emphasize the shape of this bear. So I love the green color as the complement to this brown, very warm color that you got. So I'm just gonna continue using that green and this darker green that you kind of started for the outline of him. Because then we can really emphasize the shapes that you already have laid out, which like I said earlier, I love the shapes here. So now I'm just gonna kind of highlight them.
um Anna Daly asks, "Do you know anything about a course after the one starting this month? I wasn't able to sign up, and I would really love to see another one happen."
So this one is kind of like I would say the one that kind of decides if we keep doing these. I got to see like how much of my time, or if I even feel if it's worth the students' time to do this. Where I really feel like it is like the way that we have it structured. Like I've already emailed a bunch of them, and I've already got the communication going. Where I do feel like they are passionate about doing this, and they're ready, and I'm ready to help them. So I would say if we did start another one, I've already talked to Wes about probably doing a winter one, and then next year, I do want to do a whole nother workshop along with this one where it's all about different subject matters. So I always talk about how there's 4 main subject matters. It's cute, horror, sci-fi, and fantasy. And pretty much any game or any movie can kind of fit under one of those, unless it's like drama. But for the most part, for concept artists, like those are the 4 subjects that we're always kind of involved in. So I really want to talk about like the differences between each and having you feel comfortable working wherever and being able to be like, yeah, I can do horror, or like, yeah, I can do a sci-fi, or yeah, I can do the next Neopets and have it really be really cute and awesome. So yeah, I'm planning as of right now to have another I can draw anything workshop.
Um, these aren't questions, but there's just more like statements, and I think that it's nice to hear them, so I'm going to say them anyway.
Okay.
um, it says um, by Shauna Bass or Bass, one of the two. Um, Not a question, but I'm pretty lonely as an artist. All of my art school pals vanished to the wind. Streams like this are so great. It's the only time I get to talk about my craft other than with coworkers. Thanks for these.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you feel that way about these. Because yeah, I feel like I've been doing this. Because I realized the other day I've been doing these live streams every Wednesday for the past year and a half. Like I become so used to them, I forget sometimes that maybe it means something to someone else as well. So yeah, that
Oh
was nice
yeah.
to hear.
The like when I go back and I watch other people's live streams, like when I watch like the Sycra or like Anthony Jones's live streams, like I watch these and I'm like, man, these guys are so cool. Like it's definitely something to put on while I'm working as well, which is really inspirational to do.
Yeah, I hope some people out there work while they listen and watch.
Mad Zero says, "Big thanks. I did block in lights and shadows like you said, Tim, and dang it, it works. I just have like hour or two of refining. Stay awesome, brah. Thanks.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I hope that helps out. I think that really helped me out when I was doing facial studies, where I was like, this is taking me forever. So I would literally just like block out solid chunks of shadow and light, and then it was like, oh, yeah, that makes it a lot faster.
Benedict says, I'm always in if we can, the live stream viewers. Whoa, where'd it go? There we go. Um, and you have a come together. I would love to. I love talking together, seeing different points on things, and just talk about stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I often feel like these live streams often develop into like not so much question answer on what I'm working on, but just general questions or like things that they might be struggling with. Like even the guy that was doing the facial studies and like asking really quick, do you have any advice? And I'll do my best to answer it. And that's kind of what these have become, and I really really like that. So yeah, I hope I'll always do these.
Um, Fur looked really cool, thanks. And the scratches for hard surface was even better.
Awesome. All right, really quick. So like the top of these little toes that this guy has, or the I guess the claws. I don't know what each of them would be called. The paw. I don't know. Whatever. These the different little nubs are jutting out off the hand. So like even though there might be more shadow here, just because the light, if it's coming from this general direction, it might not be hitting this area as much. But then the paws, since it's sticking out, it would be capturing that light. And that's why I'm going to add that a little more heavy on the paws. So you can see without and before what it's kind of looking like. So that's why, like with this artist, I really think they just had a great, great foundation, and just from here, it's just all about refining and highlighting how great that foundation was. All right, 2 more questions, and then we got to cut this off.
Oh man, I want to like answer all of these. Okay.
If we can do them fast, I'll just do them as fast. I'll try not to give like 3-minute answers for everyone.
Yeah, well, a lot of these are a lot of people want to know about paint, like not paintovers, but just like quick things that they can be pointed in the right direction to.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, I'll send you it over Skype. This one I saw and I was like, this reminds me of Nubia.
Oh yeah. What was their question?
They were just wanting to know about tips for lighting.
All right, so this piece gets me really excited because I love the base. I love that you're using very flat colors to just lay out literally the concept of the character, which I think is great. So for lighting, like if these orbs are emitting light, you really want to showcase that like on her. So like if this fabric right here is like more of that shiny sheen, like I would probably reflect the different orbs in it. I think that would be like a really cool way to showcase, doing this from too far away, to showcase the fabric, the material, and that there's this light being emitted from these orbs. And then even having like this gold strand reflect that too. So then this gold lining that's around her, like have it more centralized to where each of the orbs are, which you kind of have started. And, like you have it going with like the face, but then like here's a good example of where it's like a soft shadow. I think the thing you could do for this one was let's try doing a hard shadow, because this cloak or this hooded area would be casting a shadow on the head, and since the distance is relatively short, it would be more of a hard shadow. So like where the light would begin, the shadow would, or where the shadow would begin, I should say, it would be more of a hard shadow. So you can see the difference that gives. Let me do so you can see that difference, and it's already giving the impression that light source is coming from like this direction. I'd probably want to do it everywhere, and then I would have to stay consistent with that. So that would be my advice if you want to keep going with that one. All right, next. Sorry. I thought I wouldn't do 3-minute answers, and then there I go.
This is the last one of those. They just wanted a quick review of painting that they did. It was the first one on that blog. I believe it's of a piano player.
And what was their question?
They just wanted a quick review. Um,
Okay, so for something like this where it's a really intense, dramatic lighting, I'd probably even make this sharper. I just would say everywhere should be a little sharper. Like you can still have like kind of this cool fog atmosphere going on the bottom, and where like the spotlight is hitting, like you can see for this area right here. I forgot what it's called, and I should know because I play piano, but it feels like it's lit very soft and almost without any rhyme or reason. Where since it's a flat surface, like I was talking with the mech, it'd probably be more of like a consistent lighting scenario, or it'd be more flat. And then the top of it, to create that illusion of depth as well, and form on this thing, it'd be more in highlight because the spotlight is coming from overhead. So you can see the difference that makes. Let me do the, I keep forgetting to make new layers for this. I can't even do it all the way. But you can kind of see how much of a difference that gives. But now since a piano, since it does have that shiny sheen reflective surface to it, you could add in like what you kind of did like right here, heavy reflection in some areas. And that's just because of how much bounce light is kind of attracted to this area. You can kind of create a cool effect like that. Now for the close area, fabric itself, for the most part, will absorb the light, depending on what kind of fabric. But if this is something that is more just like cotton or whatever, I wouldn't just lay down white as my surface to like showcase that this is areas in light. I'd probably still have it be a general red, but then I would play with my shadow colors, and that's what will give the impression that the light's hitting him. So let's use more of this dark red because I like working with red. So oftentimes we think like if there's a light source hitting something, we have to add white to it, but oftentimes we just have to work on the shadows, be more focused on that. So you can see how this is less intensive, and like if you really wanted to add maybe somewhat of a sheen to it, you could do it more subtly. I think that gives a more dramatic presentation than having it just like all be blended white. So that would be my tip on that one. All right, one more, and then we got to cut off the stream.
I mean, most of these are just comments.
Oh, okay. Well, let's read maybe one more.
All right. From Levi, maybe your workshop could have two versions: the full version, which is with feedback and all, and another version with just the video recorded.
Oh, we thought about doing that. That is a possibility. So we're going to see how the first one goes, and then probably decide on that after the workshop. So I'll probably tell you at like mid-October what we're thinking, if we'll release it separately, kind of a thing.
Someone want to know if in terms of a Coco group, why not just make a simple IRC channel or a free note or something, like a chat room, I guess?
We could. Well, we always want to do like an official one. So I think that's why we haven't created a free one. Otherwise, we would have been all over that already. But I think since we're so on the edge about, oh, we should have an official forum type system, that I think that's why we don't have one yet. But I really would say eventually we will have one. So I know it kind of sucks, but if you could just be patient, we'll eventually make one.
All right, and that's it for questions.
All right, well, perfect. That's kind of where I wanted to end off too. So here is the progress that I made on the bear. So you can see before and after, I'm keeping most of the shape and the concept intact. I'm just kind of refining and pushing more of the light and shadow in different areas. So I want to thank both artists for sending me their work. I'll show the shark one more time in case you missed that. So here is the shark I was sent, and then this was the kind of the addition I put on it. I mostly worked on the upper half. And then this was the bear. Okay. So I want to thank you guys for coming to this live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. and that's Central Time, and that's -5 GMT if you're outside of the States. I usually post a link to the live stream about 2 hours before it will start, and then it'll also describe what I'll be working on that day. And if you signed up for the workshop, I want to give a big thanks to you guys. It filled up faster than we expected, and I can't wait to work with you guys. So once again, thanks for watching this live stream. Joe, do you have any comments?
Uh, keep drawing, do art every day, and don't stop studying.
Perfect. All right. Bye, guys.
See ya.